and build this up for you. And hopefully this will extra series of data like that. And what I will do is, first of all, select the data that's shown there, and I will insert a stacked column chart. So I go to Insert, up to the column section here, and I choose the stacked one like so. Next, I go into Select Data, and what we can see is that I've got entries here for Jan and Feb. And if I look at the name, we can see that comes from the column heading, and the Y values come from the data underneath. So if I want to add in an extra column for March, I can replicate that. So I click on the Add button. I then go to the name, and the name comes from that March column there. And then for the Y values, they will come from the data in that column like so. So I click on OK, and it creates the chart like so. So we can see that the one with the highest total sales, so the one with the highest column, is going to be that final one there for Seattle. Good. Right, so let me minimize that and go back to the demos. During the exercises, I had a go at redoing that bubble chart, and this time it worked okay. So who knows what happened there, but at least when you get access to this workbook, you will have a working copy of that, so that you will see the bubble chart as it's supposed to look. Right, so let's move on then. Now, I've got some data here where I've got sales date in the first column and then Team A figures in the second. But notice that I've actually got some empty cells there. So let's see what happens if I create a line chart for this. So I select the data, I go to Insert and choose a line chart like that. And what you will notice by default is it's looking a little bit gappy, isn't it? So where we've got empty cells in our underlying data, we've got these gaps in the line chart itself. Now, where you've got missing data, you can control how it appears on the chart. To do that, go to Select Data, see what happens if I create a line chart for this. So I select the data, I go to Insert and choose a line chart like that. And what you will notice by default is it's looking a little bit gappy, isn't it? So where we've got empty cells in our underlying data, we've got these gaps in the line chart itself. Now, where you've got missing data, you can control how it appears on the chart. To do that, go to Select Data, and then go to the section that says Hidden and Empty Cells. At the moment, it says Show Empty Cells as gaps, but if I wanted to, I could display them as 0, which gives you that effect. So we're looking as though it's a bit bumpy like that. And if I go back into Select Data and choose the third option, Connect Data Points for the line, then we get it changing to this instead. So it's basically forgetting that there are any empty cells there, and it's going straight from one point to the other and drawing that straight line between them. Now, when you have got a line like this, it's pretty easy to see the shape of it, isn't it? But what you can do is, say, add a trend line to your chart just to draw the pattern of that line out. Now, to add a trend line, you go up to the Design menu, up to Add Chart Element, you go to the Trend Line section, and I'm going to add on a linear trend line that looks like this. Now, this might be a little bit difficult to see because it's very small dots and it's the same colour. So I'm going to change the colour to be white red like that, and I'll also increase the width so it's just a little bit more visible for you, like so. Now, as well as showing you the overall shape of your line, trend lines are also useful because you can use them to make short-term forecasts. If I select my trend line and I go over to the Format pane, then you will notice that over in the options, there's a section that says Forecast. Now, if, say, I wanted to forecast 3 months into the future from where this data ends, I could use that to predict what particular values might be. So if I go to the Forecast section, I go to Forward, I put in 3 to forecast 3 periods forward, and we get this. So we can see that for the 1st of March, it predicts that the amount would be something like 2,000-ish. What has happened behind the scenes? Excel has seen that we are dealing with months, so it recognises that each period for this chart is a month. And by saying that you want to forecast 3 periods forward, it takes it 3 months forward. What I would say if you are using this approach is it's useful for short-term forecasts only. If I, say, get it to forecast forwards, let's say 36 months like that, we get our trend line changing, so we get this effect. So we can see that at the end of that 36 months extra, we get a value that's around about 4,200, something like that. But it's only done that based on relatively little information, so it could be massively out. So just be very, very careful if you're using trend lines for long-term forecasts. They're good for short-term forecasts only. The other thing that I will mention about forecasts and trend lines is that they're not great if you have got, say, seasonal patterns. So if you've got a situation where you've got high sales in summer and low sales in the winter. If that's your situation and you still want to make forecasts, what I will point you towards is the forecast sheet that's available in Excel for Windows. That will take account of seasonal patterns like that and can be just a useful thing to experiment and play with. But what I will do now is just take that back to 3 periods like so. So that we're back to saying that for 1st of March 22, our forecast would be for Team A to be on about 2,000. Right, so let me then stop sharing the screen and let's go back over to the slides. What we have seen so far then is that if you have got any missing data points, so any empty cells, you can control how these appear on your chart by going into Select Data. You can either get them to show as gaps, which is the default, or you can show them as zeros, or you can connect the data points on either side of the gap with a line. Something else that you can do with a line chart is add a trend line to it. And this is pretty useful if you want to draw out what the pattern of that line is and use it to make short-term forecasts. So, another exercise, I think, then. we have some more data there, which, as always, you can find in the exercises workbook. What I'd like you to do is create a line chart that's based on it, and I'd like you to add a linear trend line to that chart and get it to forecast 3 periods forward. What I would like to know from that is, what do you think the sales figures would have been for the 1st of December 2021? So try that out. When you've got the answer, please drop it into the chat. I'll switch my mic off for another 3 or 4 minutes, and I will come back with the solution after that time. Well, what I came up with was around 2,100. And what I think I'll do is just build that up for you and perhaps look at why we may have those differences. So let me go like so and make this a little bit bigger so that we can see what's going on there. Right. I need to first of all select my data, go to Insert, put on a line chart like so, and now I need to add on a linear trend line by going up to Add Chart Element, Trend Line, and choosing the linear option like that. And once again, it's not that clear, so I'm going to change the colour to be red and then increase the width like so. So it's a little bit more obvious. Next, we need to get that to forecast forward 3 periods. So in the trend line, I go into my options. I then go down to the forecast section and I put 3 in that forecast forward area, like so. So what we want to know then is what we predict the sales to have been for 1st of December. So we go to 1st of December here, which falls in between the tick marks. We go up to our line and we can see that it is just peaking above that 2,000 line, so at about 2,100. If you came up with 2,000, what was probably the case is you may have been looking at that tick mark and lining it up with that. And it comes down again to the default behaviour with those line charts where it puts the actual date in between tick marks instead of on them. Thank you, Excel. Right, so let us move on then. Let me see. Back in the demos, I am going to go and look at some new data. So, this time, I want you to imagine that we have randomly gone into the business of selling umbrellas. So, we got some data relating to umbrella sales. In the first column, we have got the amount of rainfall in particular months. And then in the second column, we've got the number of umbrella sales we made in the equivalent month. Now, I don't know about you, but I suspect there may be some sort of relationship between the amount of rainfall in a month and the number of umbrellas we will sell. So we can find out more about this relationship with a scatter chart. So let me select that, go to Insert, go to Scatter Chart, put one on my worksheet like so. And what we can see is, yes, there does seem to be a relationship there between the two things because we've got quite a clear pattern. We can see that it starts off with them both being quite low, and we get this curve going up as they increase together. Now, to draw out this pattern, we can add in a trend line. So we go to Add Chart Element, we add on a trend line, and I'm going to add on a linear trend line like so. And again, let me make that red and increase the width of it like so. Now, what you've probably noticed is that linear trend line isn't a very good fit for that data, is it? Our data looks curved, but instead we've got a straight line here. Now, what you can do is change the shape of that line through your trend line options. If we scroll up, we can see that we've got an exponential trend line option. And if I select that, we can see that it adds a curve to the line like so, which makes it fit the data just a little bit better. We've also got logarithmic, which has a bend the wrong way round, so that's not quite so good. There's polynomial, which looks pretty good. And we've got power, which looks less good. And then we've also got moving average, which is something else to be used in other situations where you're working out moving averages. Now, we've seen that we have got various different lines there that might fit our data quite well. In particular, we've got the exponential one and also the polynomial one as well. So which line actually fits the data best? Well, we could just look at it by eye and see which one we think might be the best, but there's actually a cunning tool that we can use. If we scroll down, there's an option that says display R² value on chart. And if I select that and move that somewhere a bit more visible like that, we can see that it says R² equals 0.9716. So what's R² and what does that buy us? Well, R² is a number between 0 and 1 that tells you how well your trend line fits your data. So the closer your line is to your data, the better the fit. The closer R² is to 1. What this means is if you are looking for a trend line that best fits your data, you need to find one where R² is as close as possible to 1. So let's try this out. Let's go through these lines. Let's see how R² changes so that we can see which line fits the data best. So, exponential. We've got R² equals 0.9605, so that's a pretty good fit as you might expect because that's very close to 1. Linear is 0.8071, so that's not quite as good, so exponential's the winner so far. Logarithmic, 0.5998. Now that's the worst of the lot so far, which you might expect because we've got the curve going in the wrong direction. Polynomial, we've got 0.9716, which is our winner so far. And then we've got power, which is 0.8124. So out of all of those, the polynomial option is the best option because that gave us the highest value of R². It gave us a value of R² equals 0.9716, which tells us that the polynomial trend line is a pretty good fit for our data. Now, once you have got your trend line, something else you can do is add an equation to your chart by choosing that option from your format pane. And it looks like this. So a y equals 0.041x² minus 1.3699x plus 14.377, which seems like a very accurate equation for umbrella sales, doesn't it? What this means is that if you know what the expected rainfall is going to be in a month, you can plug that value into your equation and out will pop the predicted umbrella sales. So you could use something like that to make predictions of what sort of umbrella stock you might need for this new venture that we've been going into. So with that, let me stop sharing the screen and let's just revisit this. What we've seen is that when you have a scatter chart, which, as you know, is used to see if there's a relationship between two things, adding a trend line can just help you draw out what that relationship is a little bit better. You can change the line type of that trend line, and you can see there's things like power, exponential, polynomial, and so on. And if you want to find out which line best fits that data, you can use R². Remember that R² is a value between 0 and 1 that tells you how well the line fits. The closer R² is to 1, the better the fit. So your task is to find the line with the value of R² closest to 1. Once you've done that, you can also display the lines equation on the chart as well. So, another exercise. Let's have a go then at using those trend line options. We have got there the planet data that we had before. What I'd like you to do is to create a scatter chart that's based on it, and I'd like you to add a trend line to it and make sure that you select the option to display R squared on the chart. What I would like you to do is use R squared to find out which type of trend line gives the best fit. Is it exponential, linear, polynomial, or perhaps power? And for added bonus points, what's the equation for that option? So try that out. When you've got the answer, please drop it into the group chat. I'll switch my mic off for 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll come back with the solution after that time.